Right. So Shivya, after the music and the
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Namaste, Assalamu alaikum, and good evening, good night, or good morning to all of you. We are pleased to have people in this meeting from all parts of the world and in different time zones. I'm Ashiria Anrud. I'm from the Netherlands. Right now, I'm a master's student at Erasmus University Rotterdam, and my family is from Suriname in the Caribbean. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is the 227th edition of our ICC Thought Leaders Forum. We wish to sincerely thank all of you who have contributed in whatever way to the success of this ongoing Pan-Indo-Caribbean and Pan-Indian Diaspora Global Project. For 226 unbroken continuous weeks, we have been here every single Sunday, and in the past 4 years, 4 months, and 3 weeks, we have featured 143 presenters from all parts of the world speaking on 26 topics. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a weekly forum and it's being hosted by the Indo-Caribbean Cultural Center, a legally registered research and publishing company operating since 2010. And today we are supported by the Dio Go Sign Foundation of Trinidad and Tobago. In order to continue this weekly program and to make it better and bigger, we are asking for suggestions and volunteers. If you give a donation, your name will be placed on our poster and all promotional materials. Please contact Dr. Mahabir for details about this. So, ladies and gentlemen, now let me introduce our moderator, who is Shalima Mohammed. She's the co-director of this ICC Zoom platform. She is a business teacher and researcher from Trinidad and Tobago and obtained her master's degree in business psychology from Franklin University in the USA. Shalima, welcome.
Thanks so much, Ashiria. Assalamu alaikum, namaste, and a warm welcome to all of you. Thanks so much for choosing to be here with us. This program is being recorded on Zoom and live streamed on the YouTube channel of the Indo-Caribbean Cultural Center. Welcome to all of you on YouTube at this time. Just a reminder to everyone on Zoom that you've been muted by our IT manager to avoid intrusions from trolls. Speakers, please do not admit anyone, do not unmute anyone, and do not allow anyone to share a screen. Thanks so much for your cooperation. Today, we are talking about the mathematical prowess of Indians in the diaspora. Tomorrow, September 30th, the national budget will be presented in Trinidad and Tobago. This exercise, which significantly relies on arithmetic and mathematics, comes in the wake of an impasse between the Auditor General and the Ministry of Finance over $2.6 billion, which was not included in the public accounts for the financial year 2023. For properly disclosing this billion-dollar discrepancy, the Auditor General, who is an Indo-Trinidadian woman, has been bullied and threatened, and the matter is now before the local courts. It is apparent that there is a challenge with computation. And this was reiterated by the director of the Caribbean Examination Council, CXC, who advised that the pass rate for CSEC O-level mathematics in 2024 across the Caribbean region was just 36%, a decrease of 7% from last year's 43%. This pass rate has been steadily declining over the past 5 years. How have Indo-Caribbean students fared in these exams? They are certainly well represented in the Maths Olympiad annually. Ancient Indian contributions in mathematics include the concept of zero and advancements in algebra and trigonometry. Across the globe, Indian immigrants and their descendants have consistently excelled in mathematics, contributing significantly to academia, technology, finance, and various scientific fields. We will hear from some of those people today. Is the mathematical prowess of Indians in the diaspora a testament to a deep-rooted cultural emphasis on education and analytical thinking? Is it physiological? What is it? What are some of those factors? Let's hear from our speakers. I want to introduce you to Professor Sudan Hansrad from South Africa. He's a professor of applied mathematics at the University of KwaZulu-Natal in Durban. He specializes in the mathematics of Einstein's general theory of relativity with a focus on applications in astrophysics. Before we welcome Professor Hansraj, I just want to let everyone know that we will be taking your questions immediately after each presentation. And I'll ask you to please be very specific with your questions. We will not be taking comments today. Instead, we want specific questions. So welcome, Professor Hansraj. We're seeing your screen.
You're seeing the screen. Thank you very
Yes.
much, Madam Mohammed. I want to thank the organizers for the kind invitation to participate in your program, the forum this evening. And I hope to share some insights about mathematics in South Africa by people of Indian origin. And you'll see that there's a rich history to report. It's a short history, but nevertheless, many active mathematicians working in South Africa. Of course, South Africa, you would know, is an exciting place emerging from a revolution, the work of Mr. Nelson Mandela and others in freeing South Africa from apartheid domination of the past. And of course, then opportunities began to be opened up to more and more people. So nowadays we are living in post-apartheid South Africa, and certainly our children can look forward to more opportunities in the future.
Professor
Now,
Hansraj, would you mind increasing your volume, please? It's a little bit low on our end.
Check sound, can you hear me?
It's a little bit better.
He probably has to speak louder.
Yeah, one cannot increase the volume of Zoom.
So you would have to speak louder, please.
Yes, yes. So the outline of my talk is, first I'll tell you a bit about myself, since you may wonder why I'm qualified to speak about the other things to come. And then I'll recount some of the earliest PhDs in mathematics in South Africa amongst Indian South Africans, other significant contributors, the schooling system in South Africa and how Indian children fare, and then indicate the road ahead for South Africans of Indian descent, and in general, South Africans of all types. So firstly, a little bit about myself. I matriculated in 1983, just to give you an idea of how old I am. And I initially started life as a high school teacher, and then became a college lecturer training teachers. And then in 2002, I started as a senior lecturer at the University of KwaZulu-Natal. Those days it was called the University of Natal. And currently, that's where I am working as a professor. And these days, I am also the president of the South African Gravity Society. I taught mathematics from various levels, high school all the way to PhD level in mathematics. And my speciality in the community side of things is that I'm heavily involved in the Mathematics Olympiad. Many years ago, I met a lady from the Trinidad and Tobago, a Ms. Indra Harak Singh, who was representing the West Indies in the Maths Olympiad, International Maths Olympiad. South Africa is a regular participant, and we finish in the top half of the table regularly. And we are one of two countries that take part every year, that's South Africa and Morocco. The other work which I do, which is of interest to this forum, is we have a body called Umalusi, which is a Xhosa word meaning shepherd in South Africa. This body guards standards in all qualifications in South Africa, school qualifications, as well as any other qualification except university qualifications. So if you want to ask something about that later, I can say something more. My own research work is on general relativity, gravitation theory, and the mathematics of space-time, basically. I wouldn't say much about that since we have a very diverse audience, may not be keen on the details. I just say a few words about my family life. The reason I snuck this in is because there's a hint of the next generation of mathematicians to come from the Indian diaspora. So my daughter, there you see the picture on the left, is Dr. Shivara Hansraj. She's PhD in applied mathematics also, and she specializes in space-time decomposition, Kerr geometry. Last week, she just had the privilege of being in Heidelberg at the Nobel Laureates Forum in Germany. And this was an excellent place to meet Nobel laureates, Fields medalists. Fields Medal is the highest honor that can be bestowed on any mathematician internationally, and other prize winners like Abel Prize winners and so on. And now let me talk about other Indians in South Africa and how they have contributed to the development of mathematics in this part of the world. Let me recount some of the earliest PhDs in mathematics. And the first on record is a Professor Ismail Mohammed. Sadly, he's late now. He passed away in 2013. But Prof. Mohammed obtained his PhD in 1960 from Queen Mary College in London. And in 2014, a year after he passed away, the state president of South Africa conferred upon him what we call the Order of Mapungubwe. These are state orders, like knighthoods and so on that you have in the UK. But he was conferred this honor for his mathematical work and moreover, his activism against apartheid. So it's quite common to find mathematicians actually taking a stand against injustice and so on. And Prof. Mohammed is no exception. He, in those early days, was a member of the Transvaal Indian Congress. And then this slowly morphed in the 1980s. In fact, in our young days, when we were school kids, into what was called the United Democratic Front. Because the ANC in South Africa was banned, Mr. Mandela and others were in jail, Ahmed Kathrada and others. This was an instrument used by the people to oppose the apartheid regime. And Prof. Ismail Mohammed took a great lead in that, amongst many others of Indian origin. But he's notable for his mathematical works. In mathematics, he resolved some important problems in group theory, and he devised what are now called Heineken-Mohammed groups. A group is a mathematical structure with certain properties in algebra. Then some other early PhDs in mathematics, and you'll see it's a short history. In 1974, a Professor Ramesh Ori obtained his PhD from the University of Colorado, began work at the University of Durban-Westville here in Durban. Professor Pubalan Pillay, who is still a very active mathematician in our department, and he's highly respected, one of the most highly respected mathematicians in the country, obtained his PhD in 1977. And then Prof. Dharmanan Babulal obtained his PhD in 1980 from Oxford University. Also one of our stellar performers in mathematics, a very highly respected scientist in mathematics, and certainly one who is taking the lead in stimulating other mathematicians. And he has produced a number of PhDs in pure mathematics in our department. We were scratching our head to find out who was the first ever Indian woman mathematician. When I speak of mathematician here, I'm speaking about PhD holder, but of course it's wider than that. And we came up with Prof. Paranjoti Pillay, who was a member of staff in our department in the University of KwaZulu-Natal, but since moved to the University of the Western Cape. And she works in point-free topology, metric geometry, fixed point theory, and so on. And is still a very active mathematician, also takes a strong lead in mentoring young and emerging mathematicians of the next generation. Here's a collection of some other big hitters in mathematics in South Africa, people who have distinguished themselves through contributions made in the larger mathematical climate. and in fact, more broadly in science in general. On the top left is Professor Daya Reddy. Daya Reddy was professor at the University of Cape Town, and he is rated an A. He has an A rating by the National Research Foundation in South Africa. There are only a few people who have a rating in South Africa. There's A, B, and C, and a very small number can actually attain an A rating. An A rating means that he is a world leader in his area of mathematics or applied mathematics. And recently, he has been admitted to the Royal Society as a fellow. That's why he now is a fellow of the Royal Society. On the top right, Professor Arun Bisham. He's now working at the University of Zululand and now retired. But he obtained his PhD under the illustrious Professor George Ellis at the University of Cape Town back in the day. Professor Ellis is one of South Africa's most prolific scientists, and many people may recognize him for his work with Stephen Hawking. There's a famous book called The Large-Scale Structure of Space-Time, and it is written by Hawking and Ellis. Ellis from South Africa, and Arun Bisham was a student of his, a PhD student a few years ago. Bottom left, Prof. Faisal Mohammed. Faisal Mohammed is at the Wits University in Johannesburg, and he has done important work in the area of differential equations, seminal work on differential equations. And he served as a CEO of a structure called the Center of Excellence in Mathematical and Statistical Sciences in South Africa. And this body was responsible for distributing funding to mathematicians. On the bottom left, bottom right rather, Kavilan Murli. He's a professor of applied mathematics in our department, young person, but he's a chief principal investigator in the project called HIRAX, Hydrogen Intensity Mapping of the Universe. And this kind of project feeds into a bigger project in South Africa called the Square Kilometer Array. This is the biggest scientific experiment on the planet, ground-based, which will be a 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer array of satellite dishes in the desert here, meant to harness signals from space, which signals are used to map the universe and to learn more about how the universe develops. So Prof. Murli is quite active in that area as an observational scientist. On the top right is my good friend, Professor Sunil Maharaj, who is a prolific scientist in South Africa. Recently, he was awarded the Harry Oppenheimer Fellowship Award, which gives him sufficient funding for a 5-year period. But the thing that I would like to point out about Prof. Maharaj is that he is highly accomplished in producing master's and PhD graduates. Almost 70 or so he has produced in his lifetime. So you can see that's a very high number. Not many people produce even one master's or PhD graduate, but he has produced a very high number. And the nice thing is that these PhDs, many of them are spread out into the African continent, and they are spearheading the development of mathematics in whichever country they are working in. So that's a great contribution to science and mathematics in this part of the world. Now I mention somebody who's not well known at all, a certain Ravindra Joshi, who obtained a master's degree from the Stevens Institute of Technology in the USA. This mathematician was shot dead in 2001 because he took a stand against corrupt individuals in the university. Most mathematicians are very conscious-based and are prepared to stand up for what is right. He did. He couldn't get a job at the University of Durban Westfield back in the day because a certain white person there, a certain Posel, opposed his admission to the staff. He took on a job as a trade unionist, and then later on he got a job at the University of Zululand. My friend, Professor Dharms Babulal, who, as I told you, obtained his PhD at Oxford, says that this was one of the most gifted mathematicians not to have studied for a PhD. Rama Govender, first Black and Indian to study at Oxford University in 1977, he obtained a master's degree and a second master's degree from the University of London. We have also a number of achievements in mathematics education. Professor Percy Reddy on the left obtained a master's degree in algebra. He became the rector of the Springfield College of Education, which trained Indian teachers back in the day. And Professor Moon Murli was the Dean of Education at the University of Durban Westville, also producing, those days it was racially based, so it was largely Indian teachers. The schooling system in South Africa, well, it's quite interesting because the apartheid regime, the philosophy actually backfired when it came to Indians, because what happened was that Indians who were well-to-do went on to become doctors, teachers, doctors, lawyers, so, in various professionals. But poor top students actually became teachers. And so that's why the standard of education is very high amongst Indian students in South Africa. We don't have any facts to elaborate because we don't do racial profiling of results and so on. But the standard of education is very high. We come from a system where philanthropic Indians like M.L. Sultan and others donated land and property and money to create institutions. A mathematics top achiever among students is Aaron Naidu, who won the South African Mathematics Olympiad, gold medal, and then he went on to the International Maths Olympiad where he obtained a bronze medal. He also won the Tertiary Maths Olympiad and is now studying at Oxford University. In conclusion, South Africans of Indian descent have made significant, impactful contributions to mathematics in South Africa and on the African continent. There are many other players, I didn't mention them, but beside mathematics itself, a large number of Indians have been elevated to leadership roles in institutions like universities, vice-chancellors, heads of learned societies, and other structures and bodies. At the end of the day, our main goal is to enhance South Africa, to enhance South Africa's non-racial agenda and move towards a classless society. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that overview of all the contributors in mathematics from South Africa. If you have a question, this is to members of the audience. If you have a question, please raise your electronic hand. It's at the base of your screen so that we can call upon you. Professor Hansraj, let me ask you, what do mathematicians do after they retire from academia?
That's a good question. It is possible to get extended retirement where if you are particularly useful to the university can extend you for a few more years, like 5 years. Or what happens with prolific mathematicians, if they served as full professors for, say, about 10 years, then they can be nominated as emeritus professors of the university. They can have all the privileges of a normal professor of the university. They can be given an office space, all the privileges staff normally have, and they can have this title for life.
I see. Okay, great. Ranbir Singh. Ranbir, you have a question? Go ahead, please. Ranbir, can you unmute?
Darryl, I think you'd have to unmute him. Ranbir? I am not seeing him.
Yeah, I'm seeing him now. Ranbir, go ahead. Try.
Can you hear me now? Hi, Shalina. Great talk, Professor Hansraj. I just want to ask you, so Hendrik famously said, the guy who made grand apartheid, what's the point of teaching a Bantu child mathematics? Did he regard the same thing about Indians? And if so, how come under apartheid Indians made these achievements despite all the odds against them, as you mentioned?
Yes, thank you. That's a good question also. The apartheid regime was specifically directed against Africans. Indians arrived into South Africa in 1860. Indians of Malay descent arrived in South Africa in 1658. So in Cape Town, you will get the Malay origin people. But so the Vervoedian principle of apartheid was specifically to prevent African youngsters from studying mathematics and science, because they believed that Africans should become like workers and so on, ordinary labor. Now, of course, Indians also, because they were a small minority, we must keep in mind that a small number, even today, it's looking like 1.5 million or so, most of whom are in the area of Durban, where I live. So it's a small number of the 60+ million population in South Africa. Back in the day, of course, much smaller. But how did Indians progress? Well, as I indicated in my discussion, wealthier Indians supported the development of education. They believed education was critically important. And so they created schools. So we went to what we call state-aided schools, where the government provided salaries of teachers, but the schools were provided by the benefactors, like wealthy Indians, landowners, and even up to technical education. As I mentioned, Mr. M.L. Sultan, he provided his property for technical education. Universities, of course, were provided for by the government. And in those days, in the 1960s, perhaps 70s, most Indians studied at what is called Salisbury Island here in Durban. And eventually that became the University of Durban Westville. It was meant principally for Indians. And we have the University of Zululand, which was meant for, let's say, Africans, and the University of Natal, which was meant for so-called whites in those days. Everything was divided racially. Of course, in due course, because the university is a space where thinking people operate, these boundaries soon disappeared and it became a bit more open. Not to say that Indians or Africans were very much welcomed by our white colleagues. There was still a barrier to get access, but nevertheless, most of the people around at that time were open-minded, as academics should be, and certainly integration, happened.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Satyadat, go ahead, please, with your question. You're muted.
Namaste, everybody. It's Satyadat from New Zealand. I'm really impressed, Nawal, to say that mathematics has been given a great importance in the education system in Africa. But what about our language? What sort of prominence and I understand that in South Africa, and I've got some of my friends over here in New Zealand as well. So many of them are teachers. They have lost language. So how all this happened where the language has not been given any prominence in Africa?
Well, thank you. It's not that language has not been given prominence. It's a question of the take-up. Actually, Indian languages are offered up to matric level in South Africa. A student can take Hindi, Gujarati, and Tamil right up to matric. It's a question of whether the communities promote that. And because it's a subject, the students have choices of subjects, and they may choose or they may not choose a language. In our young days, we were fortunate because, community structures like temples and other community arrangements would have a priest or so who would teach Hindi and so on amongst the communities that were nearby. So we would attend those classes. Unfortunately, we didn't become particularly good at it because we learned it just to, at that young age. It fizzled out. But I must say the language issue is a broader issue than just the Indian languages.
Right.
And I should just reiterate that the government in South Africa actually promotes languages. Even Afrikaans language, which is the so-called language of the oppressor, they call it, the government has not done anything to suppress any language. We have 12 official languages, including sign language in South Africa. Of course, Indian languages are in the minority, but the government still provides support for them. And the support is very little. In fact, I sit on this body called Umalusi, which I mentioned earlier on, which is a standards body for matriculation exams. Sometimes I see there's only one student that took Gujarati first language. And I ask myself, why did they set an exam for one student? But they do. The government doesn't sideline anybody. So the access is there. It's just that the take-up from the community has to also be there. Now, as I said, it's a wider problem. This morning I was having some tea with my friends, African friends here at home. So they come from a Xhosa background. They are doctors and so on, but their children can't speak their own African languages. Can you imagine that in South Africa? My neighbor also is an African doctor, but his children go to fancy private schools. They can't speak their home language. So it's a bigger problem than just Indians, I think.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Professor Hansraj, and thank you all for your questions. We'll move on now to my Gujarati brother, as Professor Hansraj introduced that topic. And this is none other than Suresh Rajpura. He lives in England, but he was born in Gujarat. He's an active member of the UK's Hindu Education Forum. His specialty is Vedic mathematics, which he teaches through programs like Fun with Numbers and Maths Magic. And he's going to tell you a little more about what he does. Welcome.
Salam Namaste. Bismillah Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. Right, my friends, I patiently listened to the previous speaker. Really very rich contents. Mine is a very simple thing. That's because I'm a very basic person. I would like to share with you the Vedic mathematics. Now, please bear with me because I'm very new to this technological thing and I need the help of them. So what is introduction to Vedic mathematics? Next, please. I'm a certified Vedic mathematics international trainer, and this is something I am very passionate about. And next, please. Before we start, we say two things, isn't it? Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devu Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat, Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Guruve Namah. So my special program today is Srimati Shakuntala Devi ji, the human computer, and I'm sure many of you must have heard about her and my source of inspiration. And next, please. Well, Shalimaji and Kumarji, how can I not acknowledge and thank Shri Kumarji and Mary Pyari Choti Bahan Shalimaji. Thank you to both of you. Hari Om. And my friends, now let's get down to the basic and the nitty-gritty. Most of the children, it doesn't matter race, religion, culture, country, anywhere in the world, they really don't like maths. And why is that? Let's look at that one. Next. If you look at, and I'm just going to keep it to a very simple thing, basic things, because of the time limit, the traditional way to do multiplication, division, square root is very complicated. And next, please. Now look at that. Just 98 times 54. It's done in 3 steps, isn't it? Before we know the final answer. And the next, please. If you look at any 3 digits by 2 digits, again, it's a long-winded process. And next, please. Oh, good Lord. Shalima Mary Van is just getting more complicated. 3 digits by 3 digits. Jesus Christ. I mean, I believe in reincarnation, but I don't want to wait for that long. I want it now. And next, please. You see, the way, and I'm not sure how it's taught in Caribbean islands, but in England and in India, where I am familiar with, yeah, it's a very long-winded process. 2 steps, 3 steps, 4 steps, number of digits. It can take very long time. Even then, you don't know whether you got it right. So you have to use the calculator. And Shalima Marivan, here is the problem. When you enter, say, any 6 digits by any 6 digits in calculator, even the calculator screen is not big enough to accommodate the number. So you have to turn it sideways to see if it works, yeah? It's just time-consuming thing. So let's do something that is basically simple and accurate. You just can't get it wrong. Next, please. Let's do, and remember, this is just a very basic. Any 2 digits by 2 digits. 99 times 6, 26. 1 step. My friend, I don't know how to say it in a most polite language. Even if you are born an idiot like me, you just can't get it wrong. By the way, I have a great sense of humor, so please don't take it too seriously. 9926 2574. It is faster than calculator. And the next, please. Let's look at any three digits. And I'm just using 999 to make it simple for you, easy for you. Yeah? 999 times 265 equals 264735. You just can't get it wrong. And next, please. Wow. Now, this is Shalima's idea. Younger sister, but very naughty and a very difficult one to deal with. 7 digits by 7 digits. 999 times 5437 268. Hallelujah. Here is the answer. So simple. Doesn't matter how big the number is, just one step. And next, please. Now let's move on from 99, because obviously I use the 99 as a starting point. 53 times 11 equals 583. Again, just in one stroke. And next one, please, Darryl. 74 times 11. Remember, in the previous example, we used 999 or 9. Now we're talking about 11. 74 times 11, 74. 814. Oh, sorry, Darryl. And the next one. Or 24 times 11. 264. Just one step. And next one. Wow. You all going to, nobody's going to like it. You're just going to love it. And that is a guarantee. Next one. 45 square. If you, sorry, go back to the next one. Yeah. My apology. 45 square will be 2025. 65 square will be 4225. And 95 square will be, no, 9025. You can check it on your calculator. And the next, please. Now, this is a good one. This is what you call the grandmother of everything. Because of the PPT and my inability to use the whiteboard, it's very difficult. But if Darryl is able to enter any number, Darryl, can you enter the number in A line? Are you able to do that? Darryl, can you write a number? Oh, good Lord, I don't know what happened here. Darryl?
Yes, he's working on it.
Yeah.
Bringing
Can
up the
you, are you
whiteboard.
able to write a number in A line? Any number? Oh, no, just one, sorry, single digit number. And try to make it as big so I can see it and everyone else can, yeah? As big size as you can. Right. Sharima Mariban, do you want to shout out any number to put in the second box?
8.
Sorry? Say something different. And make it as big as you can, yeah? So everybody can see it. Right. Okay. Kumarji, would you like to say the third number?
9.
9. Okay. And anybody listening, the fourth box?
So Darryl Sukdev wants 19.
Yeah. Anybody, doesn't matter. No, just one single digit.
One
sorry.
digit.
Yeah. Is that it?
Aruna says 6.
Yes, very.
Okay, right. Sharima Mariban, can you write down the answer I'm going to give you now before we complete the rest of the boxes? You ready?
Sorry, bro. It's pouring heavily here, so I'm not hearing you quite clearly.
Okay. Can you write down this number? I gave it to you, Mariban.
Sure.
Ready? 22894.
22894.
Yeah. Just write it down somewhere because my hands are up, so I can't cheat. Yeah? You done it?
22894.
Yeah. Okay. Now we're going to complete the rest of the boxes and you'll see the answer is exactly 22894. Are we ready?
Okay.
Very rare that I'm in a good mood, Shalima Mariban. So I will let somebody do the second line as well, number B. Line B, just one digit in each of them. Normally it's my turn, but I'm in a very good mood. Daryl, you can write down the number. Shalima, Kumarji, anybody can write the number. Just shout
Put
it
it
out.
in the chat. Anybody put it in the chat.
Yeah, that's okay.
And Daryl will write
I'm
it.
very good at mathematics, but not very good at this technology.
Okay, so Dr. Kanhai says 1375. Do you want one-digit numbers or several digits?
No, just one digit in each
One
of them.
digit,
What's
one
that
digit. So
number?
bring
Okay,
that up.
one digit. So Vijay says 3. Ashurya says. I lost it.
Just break up Roseanne's number to 1, 3, 7, 5, and you can add the rest.
Shalima Melvin, did you
And
write
then
down
the
the
four,
answer I gave you before number
then
B,
the
yeah?
4, 3, 7, and so on, Daryl.
Okay, right. Okay, right. Now it's my turn because you had 2 goes. Now it's my turn. Yeah. So if you write down 8, 6, 2, 4.
8624.
8, 6, 2, 4.
Mhm.
Okay. Let's all invite somebody from the audience to do the next D.
But somebody has 7 already. 7, 7, 3, 4.
Yeah, just write. It doesn't matter because I don't know what's going through your mind.
Yeah. And somebody put a 0. Can we have
That's
0?
fine as well. That's fine as well. As long as it's a single digit, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Right. Now let's go to the next one because now somebody has put a message there. Yeah. So let's go. Jesus Christ. Just 1 second. Okay. In E. Yeah. Daryl, if you can write down
So
2.
Daryl, 9, 8, 7, 6.
Sorry.
9.
No. The
Single
next one
digit.
is my turn. E is my turn. Because
Oh,
you
okay.
have 2 go. Then you have 1 go. Then I'll go. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So in E, Daryl, if you can write down 2, 2, 6, 5. Okay. Shalima Melvin, can you edit all up? So enter 2896 at 1375 and all that thing.
Okay, I'm not hearing clearly. Can you repeat that, please?
Yeah. So you know whatever is in A, 2896. Yeah. Plus
Add them vertically
B.
or horizontally.
Then B. And then C and then D and then E.
Okay. Daryl, since you're in control, you add up.
Poor Daryl. Sorry, man.
Ashurya,
That is very
please, whenever Suresh Ji needs a number to be written down, please take over. I don't want to miss this, but I really can't follow.
Okay, I will do that.
Anybody can edit. 2896 at
Daryl,
1375.
put the total at the end.
Yeah. If you can write it down on a, oh Jesus, what you call whiteboard or somewhere where everybody can see it down. If technology allows you to. Wow, now that's very clever, isn't it? Two eight nine six.
We are in the total or individual, like 2 plus 8 plus 9, 6 or
No,
horizontal.
no, sorry. Just type in 2896.
Add that. Yeah.
And that's right. And the next one, 1375, and the next one, and so forth.
Oh,
I'm so glad you speak English. Shalima ji, very pyari.
That's the first number you call, 22894.
yeah. I
Amazing.
have it here. I have it written down in my notebook.
Yeah.
Isn't she clever? You see, if she's my sister, she got to be clever. You see, my friend, you just wrote down whatever is number A, line A, yeah? And I worked out the answer before we completed the report. Vedic mathematics is just as simple as that. And the next, please. Obviously, what we had was just a basic introduction to Vedic mathematics. In last examples, we had 999 times 23 or 999 times 2, 3, 5, whatever it was, yeah? But there's always somebody, and it's perfectly okay. That 9, so you have 2 digits on one side and 3 digits on the other side. You can 54 on 11, or 3 digits on one side, 1 to 4 times 11, or 36 times 111, because we don't know what we'll come across. Variations don't matter at all, and I can talk about that afterwards. And the next, please. In Vedic mathematics, we know all the Hindu scriptures of Vedas. This is part of one of the 4 Vedas. There are 16 main sutras, Kumarji, and 13 sub-sutras, 29 in total. Shalima, Merriman, multiply, divide, square roots, add, anything at all you can do using this formula. All you need to do is just basic formula, and that's it. Next. Now, this is good for children. And I take it that most of the people who are listening and watching this program, they have some sort of Indian background. Yeah. Okay. Or not European background. Okay. Our children in particular suffer of lack of self-confidence because of the color. It's worse if you happen to be a female or a girl. Learning these things is not only time-saving, accurate, quicker than calculate, but most importantly, Shalima Mervin, it immensely enhances the self-confidence of our children. And the next detail. Most calculation, my friends, they are done in just one state, like 2, 3, 4, or 5, unlike the traditional method. Obviously, the answer will still be the same, but it takes longer. The main thing about Vedic mathematics is faster and easier than traditional method. And you know what? Like I said, even if you are born idiot like me, you just can't get it wrong. And the next one. Most importantly, children throughout the world, irrespective of race, religion, culture, gender, background, they just have a dislike for maths. Next. This learning of Vedic mathematics makes them smarter because it enhances their self-confidence and more clever in the class. Because I can not promise, I guarantee you, no one else will know in their class. And the next, please. Now, I had a chat with Shalimar. You know, in England, well, I can only talk about England because that's where I am. In England, we have GCSE, O-level, and A-level. In that maths paper, there's one particular section where students can't use the calculator. And Shalima Merriman, Daryl, my friend, regardless of race, religion, culture, background, anything, all students get the lowest mark in that particular section where they can't use the calculator. Next, please. If they learn, just stay on this one, please, for a minute, yeah? If they learn this Vedic mathematics, then not just in that particular section of the maths paper where they can't use it, they wouldn't need the calculator at all for entire maths paper. Now, I find it, Daryl, this is a good icebreaker when meeting friends at events, at parties, or while traveling. And next. You see, there are 2 things. And if I just use, say, Bhagavad Gita as an example. Bhagavad Gita, the message was given by Lord Krishna 6,000 years ago. So people said, it might be the right thing to do at that time. What's in it for me? How does it relate to me? The main thing is this. This connects children with their culture and the roots. And the next, please. Wow. Especially the parents in this audience. This is very good. And I'm going to say something, my own personal things. My children, our son, Shalima Mayben, every time I say something, he would say, Dad, you don't know. You are a Pindu. You are a freshie. You come from India. Things have changed. We are in England. It's 20th century, and he just wouldn't listen. I said, right, sunshine. I'm going to get you to this one. So I learned these things about 30 years ago, by the way. Right? And when I explained to him this one, he suddenly started respecting me. He loved me. There was no question about love, but the respect. Respect is something we have to earn. Yeah. And then he started telling everybody, my dad, he might come from India. He might not have been to school in India, right? But he's very clever because numbers don't lie. And the next one. So your children will respect you. Of course, they love you, but they will respect you because you know something that even the school teacher doesn't know. You see, my friends, with all other things in the world, religion, politics, culture, economics, traditions, everything, you can mislead, misinform, twist the fact to suit your own narrative and can confuse people. With numbers, you just can't. And next, please. You tell me, my friends, whether you are man or woman, black or white, rich or poor, educated or uneducated, young or old, Indian or American, who doesn't need numbers? Everyone uses and needs numbers in their daily life, full stop. And next, please. This is something, if I talk to somebody about race, then my race is more cultured than others. If I talk about religion, my religion is more pure than yours. Politicals, well, is different. Gender, we can argue about all these things and differentiate all other barriers. But when it comes to numbers, you just can't. Next, please. Now, we have so far spoken about the last one, please, Adele. Right, last but not least. Now, of course, the numbers are good for the children because it enhances the self-confidence. And I can tell you with absolute guarantee, my friends, when they go back home after learning these things, their parents wouldn't have a clue. Even their maths teacher wouldn't know how the little one did it. Yeah. But this is also good for elders. So if you have a grandparents in the family, it's also good for them. You know why, Shalima? Mariban? Because using these things, Vedic mathematics also prevents dementia. So children, good. Parents, good. Elders, grandparents, everybody is a winner. And the next, please. So we had several examples. 3 plus 3 equals 9. Well, it should be 6, my typing error. 5 plus 8 is 13. 22 plus 30, 12, 39. 1, 2, 3 times plus 4, 2, 4, 5 is 36. Definition, understanding, and interpretation of everything in the world changed. Religion, culture, politics, economics, everything. When it comes to the numbers, you just can't argue. It was the same. 3 plus 3 was 6. My typing error, I apologize for that. 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, now, and after 5,000, 3 plus 3 will be 6. Nobody can argue. So it's timeless. Next one, please. Now, just I mentioned, however it's matched in the past, present, and future, the answer will exactly be the same. The maths and numbers are truly beyond, I personally say, time and place. So we can say it's timeless. And next, please. Here is good thing. Vedic maths is easy, accurate, and a great science. You can say, Shalima, from the bottom of my heart, you can say goodbye to calculator forever. And the next, please. You don't have to believe anything I say. Remember, numbers don't lie. You can't fiddle with the numbers. Obviously, this is a short session, and we talked about Vedic method, but there are a lot of YouTube videos on Vedic maths you can find out and learn more about. And next, please. They say, now, my little sister will have a good laugh. They say, if you want to get something done quick, ask the lazy man. And that is me. Now, I don't want you to laugh. I believe in reincarnation. That's a good theory, but I don't want to taste it. I want the result now. Ask the lazy man, he will find a quick way to do anything quickly. Next one, please. Any question and answers. And the next one. I
Thank you
think
so much, bro.
I love it when you say, bro.
So I'm not saying raise hands for you, but so Chand from Fiji wants to know where we can find the 2 books written by you. I don't remember talking about 2 books written by you.
Now, nothing but the truth, so help me God. And I can swear it on Bhagavad Gita, Quran, and Bible. I may cheat, but I don't lie. No, I want to. Shalima, please be serious. Behave yourself. No, I haven't written any book. My friends, like I said, nothing but the truth. Everything I know is a stolen material from someone else. I have learned it. Yeah. And if you just click on YouTube, sorry, my high-tech thingy, if you just click Vedic math and say you want to do multiplication using just say multiplication using Vedic maths or addition or division or square roots, anything, if you are, there are thousands and thousands YouTube videos. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah,
Yes.
thank you. Dr. Kanhai has a question for you as well. Dr. Kanhai, go ahead, please.
Yeah. So, I agree that the mathematics don't lie, the numbers don't lie, but I'm thinking of how mathematics can be used to lie. For
No.
example, in America, when they were historically, when there was a question of giving people of African descent the right to vote, a decision was made that every African person, every Black person, their vote should count as, I think it's 2/3. 2/3 of a white man's vote. Now, women were not given the right to vote, but a Black man's vote, I think it was 2/3 or 1/3, I'm not sure, okay? And so they said that, and they also said anybody who has 1% African blood is considered Black. This was because the people in the South, the Southern planters, they were the ones who wanted the vote, Black people to get the vote, because they wanted all their workers, their plantation workers, to vote the way they were voting. In the North, they did not want that because they realized the South would win. So the conditions they set up was a Black person's vote is a percentage. I think it's half or 1/3 or 2/3. And anybody with 1% Black blood is Black. So no, the mathematics don't lie, but the mathematics can be used to lie. So I wanted to make that comment. If you would like to, comment on it, I would appreciate it. Thanks.
Rosanji, look, we are talking about simple, basic Vedic mathematics, yeah, the numbers. But these people are manipulating figures to suit their narrative. If somebody is a liar, there's nothing in the world will convince him because he's a addict to that one, yeah. And we are talking about just simple, basic mathematics. People use, and we all know that, don't we? All these surveys that we come across in the world, many kind of survey, the figures are, the numbers are manipulated. But we are talking about keeping it simple. We don't have any control, Maribam, Rosanji, about people twisting the whole thing. But basic thing is 9 plus 9 is 18. 2 plus 5 is 7. We are talking about the basic things. If people misrepresent, unfortunately, we don't have any control over it. It's just one of those things. There's a politics, which I'm happy with, and there's a dirty politics, which I'm dead against.
Great, thank you.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much, Bai. I think the application of the Vedic maths to all other aspects of life. And what our next speaker is coming to talk about and his experience might be able to show its significance, because I think more importantly, as a population, we need to be able to discern when we are being duped. And if we can indeed do some calculations ourselves, we should be able to do that easily. So thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to bring on our third speaker now, and this is Mr. Michael Thakur. He is in the USA at the moment. He's originally from Jamaica. He's an international macroeconomist who retired from the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, after working at the Inter-American Development Bank and the Caribbean Development Bank. Welcome, Michael. Go ahead, please.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to participate in this seminar. And I first would like to say that what I've done in this presentation is essentially to reframe the topic, because I found that in my perspective, it was necessary to sort of broaden the perspective from just the mathematical sciences to a perspective on quantitative and fields or fields of science. And I think that helps me to better test it based on the preliminary observations that I have been able to find. So forgive me for that, but I think it also may bear relevance to the broader issue of at hand, at the core of it. And so I did look at the broader academic pursuits that Indians heuristically are perceived to be more inclined to pursue and to be adept at. And so the question is, if this is indeed a phenomenon that they have prowess in, which is prowess implies an exceptional ability to do something relative to others, then is it, if it is that Indians or Indians in the diaspora do have this proclivity, then the question is, what are some of the explanation of this phenomenon if it is prevalent? And if it does it also mean that Indians have some inherent intellectual superiority in such subjects, quantitatively, science, technology, these kinds of things? And how do you explain, as I would describe it, and Malcolm Gladwell rightly called it, these outliers? And does such an observation reflect underlying persistent cultural norms of Indian families that may have carried over into diaspora Indians in these societies, including even in the societies that benefited from indentured laborers from India? And finally, I took the opportunity to zoom in, especially on that matter to do with the indentured laborer and descendants therefrom, to see if in these societies that benefited from such laborers, there has been any discernible strides in terms of their ability to show prowess or show some kind of a outlier performance in the quantitative areas of society. And I've measured it very quickly based on what I've been able to do in the short time. So bear with me if they are clearly insufficient or incomprehensive. So I'll ask you to turn to the third slide, please. Yeah, so this is what I just said, essentially. And we can go to the next slide. So the first thing that I did was to say, suppose I were to look at the International Mathematics Competition, which is the International Mathematics Olympiad, and look at it across societies like the advanced countries of the UK, Canada, and the US, where there are a large number of Indians who are from India, or descendants, and see what do you see in the data based on the personal results of such kids or such persons who performed or part candidates in such a competition. And I would just ask my colleague to click on one of these data just to give you an idea, because I wasn't able to present the data itself because it's simply too large. If you can just scroll down, you'll see how large this is. And what I would have to do if I had to go through it from way back to find the Indian names as I've been trying to do, and then to look at that relative to the total and so forth. But what I did was essentially scan it, and I fear it may be flawed because I obviously would not have done a proper measurement. But my observation from this and from the case of Canada, so you can go back to the slide now. My observation from that review, including from the US, the data from Canada, the data from the UK, and other countries like Australia, New Zealand, Singapore, Malaysia, Jamaica, and Trinidad and Tobago. The latter ones being countries that I thought were more relevant to the diaspora, that might be based on Indians that were from descendants from the indentured slaves, indentured laborers. And the data for those countries are in that competition. Some countries were not as representative, or not represented rather. It also included South Africa. I did look at South Africa as well. And what I found was the same phenomenon. There was no real distinction of Indian names standing out in any significant way compared to the others. I recognize that this is a scan, but it would require more work. But I did find that for Trinidad, it was not the case. So in Trinidad's case, I found that there was a large number of Indian candidates who relative to other names, and that was quite distinct. So that's something that I found. So in general, therefore, I concluded from this scan that I didn't quite see any prowess, any exceptional Indian names featuring as a group in these data to say, well, the Indians are much more proficient at math. In fact, what I saw was that there were more East Asian names, like from Chinese related names and so forth. And so I would say that we're not bearing that out in terms of prowess, relatively speaking. So then the other thing I did, which is in the next slide, if you might just change, thank you, was to say, let's suppose we were to now look a little more closely at some countries that have benefited from Indian indentured laborers, to see this diaspora group. If we were to see how they did in the Rhodes Scholarship, which is one of the most highest beneficial scholarship for measures academic success in going to Oxford University. And you really have to be a pretty brilliant person to get into that club, if I might say so. And I also did include the US in this case. So what I did was take the number of Indo names as I could figure it, compared to the total number of awardees by country. And then I did that percentage, and then I took the percentage of Indo population as a share of the total population, and where the Indian names that won these scholarships as a share of the total were higher than the Indo share of the population, then I simply conclude that is a slight overrepresentation, and that's good to show that they're actually doing better than the average. And then where is the opposite? It would be an underrepresentation, and that there is clearly not any kind of exceptional performance relative to others. So what you see there in the right side highlighted are what we are observing. So in the case of Guyana, you see an overrepresentation. In the case of Jamaica, where I'm from, you saw it being underrepresented. New Zealand, which is also Malaysia, is also overrepresented. A lot of Indians relative to the share of the population which are Indians. And in Singapore is mainly Asians. In South Africa, we found an overrepresentation as well. A few names that I saw in the list, which I have the list, one or two of them are names that sounded familiar from the professor's speech, his presentation at the start of this seminar. And Trinidad also, they are doing pretty well relative to other folks and in the US is the same phenomenon. So there's a growing tendency that there is something here based on this measure, that you're seeing some exceptional abilities in this field. And what I did look at was to say, I didn't just look at the quantitative sciences that they go to Oxford to study, but for the most part, they were in the quantitative science, whether it be medicine, economics, finance, astrophysics, a whole range of things that they're studying, environmentalism, medicine, and economics. I mentioned already, astrophysics in one case. So most of them are in the field of science. So I think this may well show a broader gauge that there is something happening in terms of a proclivity or inclination by these students towards the quantitative science. Can we turn to the next slide, please? And then if I might add before we go on, I did include, in the case of South Africa, I deliberately excluded the data earlier than 1994 when apartheid existed, because I didn't think it would have been reflective of a fair ability of people to get into these scholarships, because they would not have been allowed perhaps as easily to participate. So I also now turn my attention in the areas that I'm intrigued by, to say, if you're in your own country, in these small societies that are in the developing world that benefited from Indian indentureship, how have your descendants done in the field of finance and quantitative, as measured by a few key things? And unfortunately, I wasn't able to find data on how the employment, say, has transitioned from what they were at the start of their indentureship in, say, 1850s in agriculture to, say, finance and other higher tertiary level economic sectors. The data, I think, exists. Say, if one could find data in the 1940s in these societies, you probably would see how those societies have transitioned in terms of Indian representation in those sectors of the economy. And that would give you an idea how quickly they have transitioned. So I then went to other ways in which I could look at it to say, suppose you were to look at the ministers of finance in these societies. If you do have a cabinet and a government, even if you are dominated by people who are not of Indian origin in the society, population-wise, but if they are pretty smart guys in finance, in politics, they may well be selected to become the Minister of Finance. And so I said, let me test this to see, what do we see? And so I did the same thing, which I said before, which is to look at a number of Indian names in Parliament, in ministers of finance, relative to the total number of finance since those countries became independent, and then look at that share relative to this Indo share of the population to see if there is an over or under representation in terms of how these societies have transitioned, or how these Indian descendants have transitioned. And for the most part, you can see that there is an underrepresentation in most of the societies, except for Guyana, Mauritius, which I wouldn't be surprised, because Mauritius has 66% of the population is Indian or from South Asia. And in Singapore also, it's markedly the case, although it's just one famous economist, and he's pretty impressive guy. So I'm not surprised that he was the Minister of Finance in Singapore. But we did look at Malaysia, and it's the same phenomenon. So on the whole, it's underrepresentation in terms of transition to become leaders in finance at that level of politics. Can we turn the page? I also did the same thing for central banks, to see if the central bank governors in these countries, which is essentially a quantitative role and a technical role in the society, how did Indians fare in these societies where you had Indian descendants or even more recent immigrants? And you can see in the case of these countries, only in Malaysia and Mauritius do we really see an overrepresentation. Even in Fiji, where there's a large number of Indians in the population, still at 38% of the population, you haven't seen central bank governors being of Indian origin. Although I did look at the Fijian website for the central bank, and all the deputy governors and senior staff are Indians. So that's quite interesting in itself. This was also another observation that I saw. We can turn the page again. So my conclusion is that there's no real clear evidence of prowess by Indians in the diaspora for math, although we are seeing a greater number emerging in the US in most recent years. And there might be, however, some indication of an affinity for academic pursuits and especially for science. Of course, more study needs to be done, and I only did this for 4 days. So, but then the issue will arise still as to whether or not this proclivity, if it does exist, is one based on some kind of a genetic predisposition or cultural predisposition. I wouldn't want to venture into a discussion of eugenics, that Indians have any superior genetic predisposition to these kinds of things. But I do believe that good studies that need to be done or have been done that I have not examined may need to look into some of the historical, intergenerational cultural norms of India and the Indian family to see how such a phenomenon may have emerged and carried over into the diaspora. And the gentleman who spoke earlier about Vedic math may well be something, maybe there's something there that one needs to learn. But I did study also a little bit of what the industrial societies at the village level and the small industrial level in India looked like in the 1850s or 1830s in India, in the north of India, where many of these indentured laborers are from, Basti, Gorakhpur, where my foreparents are from, and other areas. And I found from the list of who the people were in these communities that there were lots of people with skills. And I would think that some of these skills warranted their knowledge of quantitative skills in measuring things. And so that hysteresis, that initial condition, would have necessarily been carried with them when they took up positions as laborers in these new societies, and notwithstanding their difficult situation, would have been able to transition quite quickly in 150 years to make their lives and their descendants' lives better and demonstrate strong advancement. And so it's wonderful to see a professor of mathematics from South Africa, who clearly must have been perhaps a descendant of someone from India, who with a proclivity and clear aptitude to such a subject. And I would like to believe that there is a relative gain that these folks brought, which may not be something that the folks who came from West Africa or others may have had in terms of the industrial exposure that society had embedded in it prior to the British colonial occupation, and which they necessarily, as villages, benefited from. The work in metallurgy and other aspects of their lives, building, doing cloth and making, weaving and all these things, and the ability to therefore have an economy that is based on measurement. That must have been something that gave them an advantage to quickly transition and to build a life. So I wanted to see if there's more literature on that sort of phenomenon. And I would love to read more on how some of these laborers transitioned from the deep rural farming societies to the tertiary sectors of these economies by, say, the middle of the 19th century. Data on which I will obviously have to look at. Can we turn the page, please? So these are some of the phenomenon that I just referred to in my statement just now. So it's in this slide. Can you go ahead, please, to the next one? I also did consider that the phenomenon of cultural, deep cultural impression to the kids from the Indian family to pay attention to math and academia may well be also a phenomenon that is reflective of societies that have large societies, one, and two, where there are significant economic blockages, structural blockages for large groups that cannot make their way without in terms of economic empowerment and economic opportunities without going through education. And so for them, the education path may have been the only path, because businesses were not possible because there were cultural and structural problems that prevented them from going upwards through simply their own initiative. It's not necessarily a theory that would hold, because in Japanese societies and Taiwan, it remains quite intense and there is no such blockage. So it may not be a theory that holds much. I want to finish with a simple, more lighter note. One of my favorite philosophers is Carl Jung, and Carl Jung never liked math. And he never appreciated the transitive rule in algebra, which says that A equal B and B equal C, then A equal to C. He says that if as it is proposed that A then turns out to be equal to C, if A is an apple and B is a banana, and then you say apples equal bananas and then bananas equal pears, so apples equal pears, he says it's impossible. Apples are apples. Apples cannot equal pears. And I tend to share his sentiment. I do feel that there is a parallelism here in the sense that we are all different. Apples are very valuable to us because of the roughage and the citrus and the vitamin C that you get from it. And bananas are equally valuable to us for the potassium that you get from it. And we therefore need to remember to appreciate differences as much as we appreciate similarities. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Thakral. Very interesting presentation. We recognize the limitations, the compilation of data, and the attempt at analyzing that data is quite commendable. Thank you very much for doing that. Your fellow Jamaican has a hand up already. Shani, go ahead, please.
Hi, Michael. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
All right, great. First of all, I'm so happy to see that you're presenting, so well done. I found it very interesting the way you set up to ask beyond just a mathematical question, going into things like the Minister of Finance. And I wonder if it's a deeper seated reason for example, the Indo-Jamaican to just be a little more quiet. In other words, I don't see this sort of burning desire to go into politics, but just to live their life almost, you know what I'm saying? And I wonder why I'm not seeing more Jamaican politicians of Indian descent. And this is not a question that you may be able to answer, but it's something that I've pondered, you know, people in authority, people who are out there who are very, to use Professor Mahavir's thing about being the alpha male and, you know, Indians are not alpha males, but this is about how visible does a Jamaican Indian want to be in the world of politics and finance? All right, so that's one. Number two, the issue of math in Jamaica is one that it's so serious because a lot of our students are failing mathematics because they go in with a preconceived idea that math is so hard. Math is so hard. And so you go home and the parents are like, oh, I can't manage this because it's so hard. And I also wonder if that is what is happening within the communities as well. But I do agree with you that maybe something else is what we have the prowess in. Maybe it's agriculture, maybe it's something like that. Because I know there's a deep-seated knowledge of the seasons and how things grow and so on, rather than mathematics per se. So thank you so much for your presentation. That was pretty good. Thank you.
You're welcome. On the matter, if I might, on the matter to do with Indians and their low-key nature in Jamaica, you know, as you probably saw from the data I presented, I think there are around 3% of the population in Jamaica that are of Indian extract, and I think there's a lot to explain why they have been the way they are. I mean, for one thing, unlike, you know, there's so many reasons, but essentially, the Indians in Jamaica, you know, they were scattered. It's a larger country, and unlike Guyana and Trinidad, perhaps many of them were pooled more closely together and were able to retain some of the cultural norms that would have been brought over from India. In some cases in Jamaica, these plantations were pretty far apart, and so and of course they were a smaller number relative to the total Afro population. So you know, there may have been just a lack of sort of a unity voice or coalition among themselves, organized ability to organize themselves to make the argument for their own support and so on. And I don't know if that's it, but I do know that you know, they essentially made their way but kept quiet. I think they kept quiet because of you know, their insecurities, and essentially made efforts to put their kids through education because that they felt was the path. I suspect it's the same phenomena or even more intense in case of Fiji, where the lands that the Indians had after they finished their terms were not even lands that they owned. They were leasing the land. So in their case, they knew there were even more insecurity about staying on such land and the importance of getting their children out. And there are people from Fiji who may be able to elaborate more on that. But one professor from Fiji did talk a lot about that insecurity and the need in those families to make sure their kids are educated to get away from it. So you know, in some cases, in my grandfather's case, they had like 13 children, and they all became teachers and engineers and other things. Only one remained in the agricultural field. They all left. But as regards whether or not they have gotten into politics, I just don't know. In the Jamaican society, the Indian group is almost invisible. You know, there are many times I've had to face the reality that I may not even be considered a Jamaican, even when I know I am, and so forth. And people will ask you questions, you know, a couple of times. You know, I've had many such cases and phenomenon. So it's not a society that and then because of the small number and inability to have a society of Indians among Indians marrying and so forth. You know, it was a lot of has been, as you well know, a lot of intermarriages, and so the cultural norms have actually diluted down. And one might even argue that among many politicians in the society and leaders in the society, people will quietly tell you that my great grandfather or my grandmother was an Indian, but they don't look that way anymore. So there are there's Indian blood in the society. I met last year with the Indian High Commissioner in Jamaica, and he told me, you know, that maybe there are some leaders in the society who said to him that, did you know I'm also partly Indian? And these are people way up in the politics. I can't say who they are. But the point is that, yeah, there are, you know, Marlene Mallah Fort is half Indian in the sense of Afro. And there are a few others like that. So you don't have any more that straight folks who look like me with classic sort of Indian features, I believe. You have a lot more mixtures and second generation mixtures. So that's also why you don't see it as visible.
Thank you very much.
In terms of the low performance of math, as you rightly said, Shlima, this seems to be a phenomenon across the Caribbean, and clearly there are many issues there. I don't really know. I just know that it's becoming easier for the kids to do things with that which you can do online, and to maybe reading is easier, and doing all the things you can copy things online. You can't copy a math solution so easily. So it's just changing.
So
Good.
we need a lot more Suresh Rajpuras out there to make sure if your device fails, you can still get through.
Yeah.
Dr. Mohammed, that's a question for you.
Yeah, I wouldn't be long because I'm watching the time, and Dr. Jogi from Trinidad is anxiously
Just to
awaiting his
present,
turn.
yes. Mhm.
So you don't necessarily have to respond, Michael, because but I want to comment drawing from Shani's remarks, and that is there's ethnic politics in Trinidad and Guyana, and to a large extent Suriname. I see you didn't have Suriname in your data set, but forget that. So it's ethnic politics. We have two major political parties in Trinidad and Guyana, Black or African and Indian. When the African party, as now, is
Yes.
in power, you would probably never get an Indian governor of the
Yes.
central bank or Indian minister of finance. And it's good, it's interesting you made the point that when you look at the senior staff, the deputies, they are
Yes. Yes.
Indian. So we talk about the gender glass ceiling, but there's an ethnic glass ceiling too, right?
Yeah.
I just want to close by saying one thing. In the last few years in Trinidad and Tobago, the government, PNM government, Afro-led government, has reduced the number of scholarships, CAPE, considerably because Indians were dominating.
Oh my
And
God.
they have banned, they have given directives to not to publish the names and photos of the scholarship winners, because again, Indians were dominating, right? So
Likewise at the SEA level, to get
oh yes,
to get into a secondary school, most of the top performers were people of East Indian descent,
Yeah.
and now those statistics no longer available in the public domain.
yeah.
Wow.
The ministry is not publishing the names and putting the photos of students who are doing exams at all levels, primary and secondary in Trinidad and Tobago. So if you may forgive me, Shalima, we have to move on. Dr.
Yeah.
Jogi is
Yes, we
waiting.
do. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Michael, I just want to reiterate Dr. Betty Govindan's point, though. She made an important point that there are many Indians who do not have Indian names, and this is something that
That's right. Yeah.
will skew your results. We know this, and it's a
Yes.
reminder to everyone in this audience that it's so important to maintain those names.
I have an extra R, but I'm still there.
Yeah, you are. Good. All right, thank you very much for your contribution today.
You're welcome.
So let's bring on Dr. Dale Jogi from Trinidad,
Okay,
holding
thank
a
you for having
PhD in maths from the University of the West Indies. He has published several mathematics textbooks and designed undergraduate courses currently offered at the University of the West Indies. Welcome, Dr. Jogi.
Yes, thank you for having me. Pleasure to be here. Okay, so my presentation is on the mathematical prowess of Indians in the diaspora. So I thank you for the previous presenters, well articulated, Mr. Thakur et al. So personal background, my parents were both teachers. My father, Mitra, was a math and technical vocation teacher. My mom was a primary school teacher at the infant level. I attended Queen's Royal College in Trinidad and got my PhD in mathematics from the University of the West Indies, St. Augustine, and a postgraduate diploma in education. Recently, I was fortunate to be recognized by the School of Education for the 50th anniversary of their DPED program in recognition for my contributions in the field of mathematics education. So in the Department of Mathematics, I was able to construct some mathematical software courses, MATLAB, Maple, and believe it or not, Microsoft Excel. And these courses are still being utilized in the actual science department, etc. And there's also a couple of service courses, 1115, 1125, that are offered at FST. And this kind of underscores the lack of knowledge that some of my children exude after coming out from CSEC and CAPE. Because some of them could not differentiate functions, integrate, and so forth. Some of them couldn't do basic factorizations, and we found it necessary to develop service courses, so to bridge the gap. So those who would have to do physics or chemistry and so forth, they'll be able to articulate mathematically. So for 2 of those courses, I would have written textbooks, and recently I've written a book in additional mathematics for the CSEC level. The term mathematics is derived from 2 Greek words, manthanian, which means learning, and tekn, which means art or technique. So what's mathematics? It's the art of learning / related to disciplines. So obviously mathematics is an exact science and involves high cognitive thinking skills. John Locke would have alluded to this, and he said mathematics is a way to settle the mind, a habit of reasoning. So this was stated in his theory of mathematical knowledge and of a possible science of ethics. So there's 2 basic types of knowledge. One is conceptual and one is procedural. Conceptual knowledge is related to a concept like a number, a fraction, an equation. You teach children the concept of a triangle or a square or quadrilateral or a function. What is it? Procedural knowledge related to a procedure like adding fractions. So I know what a fraction is, that's a concept, but can I add them? Can I solve an equation? Can I find the area of a triangle? How do I compute it? Now let's look at famous Indian mathematicians and their contributions. Aryabhata, the square of A plus B. Brahmagupta, introduction of zero. Ramanujan, legendary. Properties of the partition, function, and number theory. C.R. Rao, statistical legend, theory of estimation. Bhaskara, the declaration of division by 0, and that the sum of any number in infinity is also infinity. Bose, who collaborated with Einstein, believe it or not. Modern theoretical physicist from India. India has a rich history of mathematical genius with contributions across centuries. Pioneers have left an indelible mark, a legacy on the world of math. So of course, it includes the concept of zero and advancements in number theory, statistics, mathematical physics, etc. What does this suggest? Indians have contributed to both the conceptual and procedural development of mathematics historically. Eminent Indian mathematicians, Ramanujan, Ganesh Prasad, who went to Cambridge, Bose, right? Hence the boson or God particle. Chandra, who's from the diaspora, he's a US mathematician. Balsarab Bhatt, biomathematics, predicate theory. C.R. Rao, estimation theory. Pradeep Sideshwar from Bangalore, fluid mechanics. Across the globe, Indian immigrants and their descendants have consistently excelled in mathematics, contributing significantly to academia, technology, finance, and various scientific fields. So we see the CEOs of Adobe, Microsoft, Google, and IBM, as well as the deputy director of IMF. All of them, of course, are from the Indian diaspora. And what is quite interesting, so just based on my little research, is that all of these persons in this figure, all of them did their first degree at probably IITs in India, and then migrated to the States, probably Stanford, Princeton, etc. And, they would have evolved academically and moved up the trenches. Eminent mathematicians from Trinidad and Tobago. Rajendra Kapildev, So he was born at the Lion House, which was portrayed in V.S. Naipaul's A House for Mr. Biswas. Very interesting, because I would have alluded, I went to Queen's Royal College. He went to Queen's Royal College and V.S. Naipaul. And if you look at the allegory of the house, Mr. Biswas, Mr. Biswas, when he was moving up through the ranks, would have been living in the Lion House. So that's about 600 or 700 pages in that novel. And Rudranath Kapdil was a de facto member of that household. Obviously, he would have been of a greater stock than Mr. Biswas himself. Kapildea would have gotten an open scholarship and migrated to England. He was a mathematical physicist and eventually came back to Trinidad and became a politician. He was a lecturer at the University of London. Aerodynamics, and he studied aerodynamics, and he was a space theorist. So the theory of rotation and gravity was also known as Kapildea's theory. It had applications in early outer space expeditions in the 1960s and the 1970s. So in 1968, he would have written Gravity, a New Approach. And that gravity was a consequence of galactic rotation. So let's fast forward. Harold Ramke Soon, who's from Tabaquite, a very rural area in Trinidad and Tobago. And he would have written an autobiography. He was one of my mentors at the University of the West Indies. Applied mathematician who went to Mona, then University of Toronto, and finally did his PhD in Calgary. And he has notable contributions in micropolar and microcontinuum fluids. Very articulate individual. He was an independent senator at one time. Executive member of Association of the Academy of Sciences, which is the IAP, as well as other, regalia. And when you look through his autobiography, it's clearly articulated that he came through from poverty. And he would have talked about the family structure and how he was, there were college exhibitions. There were only 200 college exhibitions at that time. He eventually passed and got into Presentation College in San Fernando. In a tie he was in the 197th place, but there was a tie of 9 students. So he would have alluded that, it was like do or die. What do they do with the 12 spaces? Would they only use 3 or would they use the 12? And in the end, they actually gave out 208 places, and he was one of those. And I would have interacted with Professor Ramke Soon on many occasions, and I would have seen him taking his family, little nephews or grandnephews or whatever, when they had to migrate locally from San Fernando and stay at his headquarters in Valsine. So he would have been coming out of the trenches, out of poverty, and then assisted, in terms of his lineage or what have you. So he made one nice statement from Julius Caesar. And there's a tide in the affairs of men which, taken at the flood, leads on to fortune. And he was alluding to that college exhibition, which brought him out of poverty. All right. And of course, we see the effects now. What can we say about the mathematical prowess of Indians in the diaspora? So what would have been alluded to in the thesis statement by Professor Mahabir, in terms of cultural emphasis, can they drive students to achieve higher performance in education? And in my opinion, yes. And let me tell you why I say this, right? So Indian culture stresses familism over individualism. So if you look at collectivist theory, we have a collectivistic family dynamic, right? This is not rhetoric, this is fact, right? There is a family dynamic in the Indo households. And this is my belief that maybe subconsciously it may have been handed down. Now, I'm not saying that there are not other ethnicities. I'm just talking in terms of Hinduistic culture. If you look at the Bhagavad Gita in Shloka 14, verse 1, you would, in chapter 1, it alludes to the family dynamic. And there's a connection between family life and virtue. which states age-long family traditions disappear with the destruction of a family. So it is critical in their statement in that shukla that, you know, it pronounced family values. And to me, this would have digressed and come entrenched into not an individualistic, but more collectivistic mentality, especially with families. So we know that older siblings, I know this for myself, older siblings would have helped me when I have had problems, you know, in standard 2 or standard 3, and my brother, what have you, would have assisted me in my mathematics, right, and other fields as well. But we know that other extended family members frequently help younger counterparts in areas of academia they may struggle with. And Professor Ramki soon would have alluded to this in his book when he was doing this do or die exam, that he was assisted in Tabakit by one of his relatives in English, not in maths, but in English. But he was assisted because they were aware, hey, there's a guy that has potential and he could come out. And he did, and he gave back. He's still giving back. I was looking, there's a lot of literature in the Indian American diaspora. And one was a mass mutual study in 2017. That was pre-COVID, of course, where they actually they did a study quantitatively. They said that Indian parents consider college education as the key to a child's success, their maturity, their respect, and a gateway to full employment. And this was a very interesting statistic. In America, 82% of Indian American adults are college educated. Very interesting. Quite interesting. Conclusion. Successful figures in academia and industry within the Indian diaspora serve as role models. So, of course, students, children would feed off or be inspired by adults who would have succeeded as well. So younger generations would be inspired to strive for excellence in mathematics and beyond. This success is fueled by a strong foundation in mathematics, often nurtured from a young age, coupled with a commitment to higher education and a drive to achieve excellence. And achievements of Indians in the diaspora reflect both individual talents, which we can't deny, but in my opinion, it's nurturing, coupled with a deep-rooted cultural emphasis on education. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jogi. So you're reiterating that in order for a child to be excellent in maths, you must have the dual nature and nurture contributing to that child's.
Certainly, for them to reach that other level.
Yeah.
Yes, because you can only carry yourself up, you know, so far. So you need that group dynamic around you.
Right. So what are we lacking? What are we lacking in the Caribbean region such that our results are declining annually?
No, but that is not we're not lacking human capital, you know. We're lacking infrastructural resources. That's a different problem. Right? So if you look at budgetary requirements in terms of how much is divested through healthcare and education, right? We're malnourished here. So we're seriously lacking in terms of infrastructural capacity. To me, that is a major problem in Caribbean culture in terms of education. I don't think we're lacking in terms of family dynamics, right? We definitely not lacking in terms of potential intellectual capital. I think the problem is at the ministerial levels and governance.
Right. So I want to open, thank you very much for that. Let me open up the floor to your questions. We have a few minutes left. Anyone with questions for Dr. Jogi in particular, please raise your electronic hand. Dr. Mahaval, do you have a question?
So we have done analysis, Michael and others have done analysis of the ethnicity of students who are excelling in maths. So what we have to look at is the ethnicity of maths teachers. And Shalima, in your school, you did mention something like that. And I'm sure Dale, or those of you in the audience who are in the high school system or university in these countries, you can say something about us.
Yeah, I've made an observation that I can't tell historically, but I've just made an observation. For example, I would have visited Natick, Massachusetts. Where was the head of MATLAB, MATLAB. And when you go inside the campus, you realize, but they are only Asians. And I was wondering, but this is not rhetoric, this is my observation. I went inside and I observed that the management structure, right, were non-Asian. But in terms of the technology, the technological fabric, not the marketing. So marketing were US based. And the technological fabric were Asian, Chinese Asian, Indo-Asian, that they form the core group of MATLAB's engineering capacity. So I was wondering, but why are Indians going into STEM-related fields? It's just an observation. And obviously, I mean, education has evolved and success breeds success. And, you see a uncle who is an engineer, and then you say, well, maybe I want to be an engineer. Or maybe it could be because of the size of India and the amount of IITs that they have and the kind of talent that they're bringing into into the engineering fields. But I could definitely see a cultural shift that there's a lot of Asians, Indo-Asians, Chinese Asians, etc., that actually go into these STEM-related fields. The reason for it, I don't know.
Interesting observation. Suresh Ji, you have a question? Comment?
No question as such, but just an observation. You see, we hear this all the time, what the British did it or does did it or whatever it is, yeah? I think we really need to move on from this victim mentality. We're not going to progress by blaming others. Whilst it may be an easy thing to blame others, yeah, and there are absolutely no reason to question or doubt what the previous or other people say, yeah, but we really need to move out of this victim mentality. The only way we can really be successful is get out of these things and get on with it. That's all. Thank you.
Good. Thank you very much, Ranbir.
Shalima, thanks. In connection with why do people go into STEM-related fields, I think what I found Indian Chinese culture is very logical, for certain steps. And I'd say that as someone who could not get into it. I'm neurodivergent. I've got dyslexia, dyspraxia, I've got ADHD. Ironically, I can write better, but I see numbers whizzing around the screen because of dyscalculia. So not all of us are really into it. But I mean, the reason is that there's seen as value. Apart from VS Naipaul, how many of us become great writers? I mean, not a lot of us. We just do maths. So
Excellent observation.
Yeah, very interesting observation there. And thanks for sharing your personal situation, Ranbir, as well. So, one of the things that we probably have to look at is the physiology. Because if you were, as Ranbir just identified, if it is that you were to be a logical thinker, you really ought to have a fully functional frontal lobe in your brain. And if it is that your frontal lobe is actually, as you grow older, developmental studies have shown that the frontal lobe is fully developed in children, but not necessarily so in adulthood. So what Suresh Ji has raised about being able to use mathematics, especially Vedic math that he showed, and the elderly is a way of ensuring that you can maintain that ability to do logic even in old age. So perhaps we need to look at not just nature, but we also have to look at coming back again to nature. If it is that you don't exercise it, your ability to do that logic is going to be lost at some point in time. So you all raised some very, very interesting points and some good questions. And I think there's a lot more room for research, which absolutely needs to be done. And I hope some of you all in the audience take the opportunity to do so and follow through. I want to say thank you very much to all of our speakers today. It has been quite an enlightening session, and I really appreciate your time and your efforts. Thanks also to the members of the audience. Let me turn you all over now to Ashiria. Go ahead.
Yes. Thank you, Shalima. You've been a wonderful moderator as usual. And thank you all to take the time to attend today and participate. As was said earlier, this is a public meeting. It's being hosted by the Indo-Caribbean Cultural Center. And today we are supported by the Deo Gosign Foundation of Trinidad. Feel free to contact the ICC to publish your books. And remember that we are asking you kindly to give us your suggestions as well as to give a donation. And your name will then be placed on a poster and all promotional materials. Please contact Dr. Mahabir for details about this. Our topic next Sunday will be the continuation of our series on live conversations with Indian elders. Thanks to the advisory and planning team led by Dr. Kumar Mahabir, thanks to our IT consultants, Daryl Grantham and Naveen Mungal, who have been advising on recording the program, which will be uploaded to our website and to YouTube permanently for posterity. And thanks to Daryl again for designing the poster, and Ravin Ram Singh for doing the social media marketing, and Maria Mohammed for producing our TikTok videos. Please visit, like, and subscribe to our YouTube channel to see all our past recordings. I'm Ashiria Onward from the Netherlands saying goodbye. May God bless you all. Dhanyavad.